Managers of Reddit, why are you keeping that one butthole employee on our team? Because he sells. He sells a lot. He's a cocky, arrogant, pitter, but he averages selling 900 units per product demo, when the average is around 130 units. And since they all demo the product independently, the rest of the team doesn't have to deal with him. Just me. This guy was a 6 feet 7 inches failed professional baseball pitcher. He came to work at my produce stand at a huge farmer's market 1x weekly on Sundays for some extra cash. This guy showed up half an hour late every week, straight from sleeping in his car after the bar, hungover, probably still drunk every single week, inevitably puking behind one of the trucks at some point. He was a mess. We kept him for 2 reasons. 1. He could sell cherry tomatoes like I have never seen before or since. He easily sold 50% more cherry tomatoes than the next closest salesperson. If we put him selling something else, he did about average, but something about those cherry tomatoes made him a magically machine. 2. Women of a certain age found him irresistible. We had several regular wholesale customers, 40s plus married women. When they'd buy a lot, we'd help haul the stuff to their car if we weren't too busy. When this guy started working for us, these married women went bonkers for him. Previously in a hurry to get out before the crowds got too big, now they'd wait around until this guy could help carry their stuff to their cars. Only him. It was like Gob in Arrested Development walking the old ladies to their cars at the country club. What a wonderful man. Shows up late, with a hangover, vomits behind trucks, and still manages to be 1.5x better than the next closest guy. Various reasons. Sometimes I don't know he's a butthole. Sometimes it's just you guys who know it, but since you won't say anything or show me any admissible evidence as to how he is detrimental to the workplace or how he is consistently messing up, he stays there. I can't just fire him because you think he is an butthole. If he gets his work done or meets his quota or whatever criteria it does to have the job, it's tough to get rid of them just because the team doesn't like him or her. If he's in butthole, and management knows it, but knows that she's not in butthole enough to fire, it'll reflect on his pay and hey, maybe he or she will quit soon. The butthole that works for me is our facilities guy. He deals with crappy vendors all day that try and frick us over. It is helpful to have someone with his personality on our team to deal with those folks. To be honest, I kind of like buttholes, and this is probably why I enjoy Reddit. Being a butthole can be one of the tools in your arsenal. It's true. I used to be a lot more hot-headed because it got crap done. Sadly, it also kept me from advancement more than once at my old company. I'm much more calm at my new company, but I am tempted to get mad and get results sometimes. The dark side isn't more powerful, but it is easier. We can't fire her for performance. It's like she knows she is on the line and keeps figuring out how to proactively be ahead of the curve. We have an absolute nightmare employee in our department. She argues with clients on the phone, is rude to everyone, picks fights constantly, misses tons of time, lies, makes frequent mistakes and does incredibly sloppy work. She once lied about going to a conference and defrauded the company for 2 days' pay and got caught, but did not get fired because HR feels bad for her. She's had a rough life, so they let her slide. It is incredibly frustrating for those of us that have to work with her on a daily basis. We are expected to just take her bad attitude with a grain of salt, but I know someday, someone is definitely going to punch her in the face and I secretly can't wait. You should all quit on the same day, citing her as the reason. We had this problem in the military. Basically it boiled down to a paperwork issue. Every 6 months or at the end due for posting with a unit. I think it was 6 months. Might have been a year, you're supposed to get an evaluation. This ultimately breaks down to something like this stupid interim report cards we got as kids. If you were lucky enough not to receive these, quick rundown is that they assigned a letter to your progress thus far, not a grade letter, just a letter. G, S, or N, good, satisfactory, and needs improvement respectively, and a comment or two from the teacher. So in the military we had to fill out one for every person directly below us. What they did right, what they did wrong, etc. Basically as long as you don't get an N you pass and get points toward a promotion. Here's the problem. No one gives a frick about the people who get S. No one asks questions. S's basically did their job. No one got hurt in an unavoidable accident. Competent. If you go with G or N, you have to justify it citing specific events. Most bosses are willing to play up the stuff you did to get you that cookie for a G, but to justify an N you need to get super specific. Dates, times, witnesses in some cases. A lot goes into reporting someone freaking up, and you need a fair amount over the course of the 6 months to justify it. Or you could just give the guy an S, fill out a generic sheet, be done in 5 minutes, and know that with that they may be getting promoted and now they need to be posted out because there isn't a billet for them in your unit and you'll never have to deal with them again. Guess what most people do? It's referred to as promotion by attrition. Managers don't all have the ability to fire someone. Most have to answer to a boss, HR and legal first. Hiring is not only risky but it's also very expensive, so it's really a last resort and requires a ton of documentation and time, so chances are your manager also hates so and so and is as mad about it as you are. It depends on where you work. I managed a franchise and it didn't require a single sheet of paper to fire someone. Yeah, you end up wasting a week or two training a new employee, but it's better than keeping dead weight on board. I supervised the student workers in a department of a university library. There was one sophomore who was kind of a dong, was insubordinate, called in a lot and wasn't very good at his job. That last part was quite a featuring because the student's responsibilities were vital but not very difficult. I'd often catch him playing computer games rather than what he was supposed to be doing at that time. I gave him a bit of latitude and gave him more chances to improve because his girlfriend also worked in the department. He was hired on her recommendation. She was amazing, hardworking, smart and reliable. But after a while, it was clear he wasn't getting any better and we were paying him to dong around and occasionally frick up simple work that another student had to correct. I made the decision to let him go, but he came to me and asked if I'd write a recommendation for a job at a performing arts camp that summer. He kinda sucked at library work, but the camp job seemed right up his alley, and if he got that job, he'd leave without me having to fire him. I told him that I'd like him to get that job. I meant it, too, but I'd need to see some improvement from him quick in order for me to write a positive recommendation for him. So for the next 2 weeks, he was a model employee. I was genuinely impressed. I wrote a recommendation letter saying that I was impressed with his growth during his employment in the department and that I thought he'd be ideal for the job he was applying for. A few weeks later, he got the job and put in his notice that he'd be leaving us at the end of the semester, and he promptly returned to his old ways. He was probably even worse. I let him work until the end but made him ineligible for rehire. I worked for the school my last year in college, and dang, it seemed like every student employee was utter dog crap. All I did was be a good employee for a pretty easy job, and I was treated like a king because of it. Respect for your job pays off, kids. Typed from my desk at my post-college office job. Sometimes it takes a really long time to gather the evidence to fire someone. I might be in that process already but couldn't tell you about it. Source: and manager and have manager friends. I hire but can only recommend firing. I supervise at a manufacturing shop. Most of the time, for us, a bad employee means he works too slow or keeps making mistakes. Both of those problems come from poor training. Employees gang up and are resistant to new guys. They say as little as possible and help him as little as possible. Leave him alone with a 5 minutes task for an hour. So his performance is your fault. You're the reason he's bad. It's always funny how the guy who has experience in the field will bomb. But if I hire someone's cousin or brother, with no experience, they are practically independent by the end of the first day. I do my best to shadow training, pull the new employee aside on the first day, end of the first week, and ask how everything is going. I watch secretly from the window, but I can't be everywhere. I have other things to be doing. There is a ton of paperwork and justification with HR and legal involved with firing a person. And bad personality is not justifiable legally if they are performing their job responsibilities. Firing someone for being an butthole is grounds for said butthole to file a lawsuit for wrongful termination. The only time I have had to keep a non-performer is when we have been on a hiring freeze, which means if I fire the person I cannot backfill them. Sometimes a poor performer is better than no performer at all. Because I'll take a single competent butthole over a whole department full of barely competent yet friendly pencil pushers. Used to manage a grocery store in a bad part of town. We had a problem with employees who would get hired and then purposefully frick up until we'd fire them. They would then go on unemployment. In our state, companies with large payrolls and more firing had to pay more into the unemployment fund. Ergo, we were discouraged from firing people unless it was for extremely serious offenses. Thus, we kept a lot of people on staff who were borderline incompetent or just straight up unpleasant to work with simply because firing them would cost us more in the long run. It sucks for the rest of the team, but just as you have to do what we tell you, we have to do what corporate tells us to do. Way after the fact edit. In my state, even after being fired with cause, it is still possible to collect unemployment. There will be a hearing where an arbiter, usually a retired judge, will hear both sides and make a ruling. Even with great documentation, occasionally the ruling will go against you. Most of the successful hearings I had were when the situation devolved so badly that we had to involve the police. I had a guy who essentially abandoned the job. He stopped coming into work, wouldn't want to return my calls, and had no contact with us. After 3 weeks of this, HR gave me the okay to terminate him. He came back 2 weeks later asking to be put back on the schedule. I told him no, he'd been fired. He still filed for unemployment. I lost that hearing. Not a manager, but I've been told by a couple different managers that if they fire someone, they run the risk of losing headcount, so they would rather keep the dead weight, i.e., just because you're suddenly one person down now doesn't mean ours will approve to backfill the position. I used to run a team at a call center for a big software company, and there was one guy everyone hated. Everyone. Didn't do his job, made other people do his work for him, was generally a douche all around. We'll call him Toby in this story. I tried so hard to get rid of him, but there just wasn't really any proof of what everyone said, even though I absolutely believed it. We had software that would randomly record calls for each person and they would be graded. This guy was incredibly lucky, never got a bad one recorded, until one day Toby comes up to me and says, "This guy wants to talk to her supervisor. He's really mad. My team only really dealt with CSAT people at companies that sold our software and generated like 40% of our total revenue. So my company was super serious about making sure they were happy." I start talking to the guy on the phone and start with, "Hey there mister. This is Young there Ryan, I'm Toby's supervisor." He was telling me Toby? What? He told me his name was White. What the heck is going on over there? And I smiled knowing he finally fricked up. I started listening to every call, reading every email. The rest of my day consisted of watching his every move. And it turns out he was consistently making up names, accents when talking to customers and transferring calls to himself or just hanging up on people. His give a crap was so broken I actually respected it a little. Anyway, he got fired that day. TLDR. Toby was the worst and I tried to get him fired but couldn't. Then he did it himself. That's actually really smart. We have a kid who left a couple months ago. His last shift wasn't one of mine, but I heard from a few people that he took the "I don't have to do crap, it's my last day" attitude, so he got sent home early. My boss knew, and we all assumed she wasn't going to let him back in January, as he'd planned on coming back since he left. It was after he left that I heard about how he was a dong to everyone, though, like, making fun of the transition trans employee, or some people's looks or sexual orientation. There were a couple different girls he asked out, and was a jerk to each one after being rejected. Thinking he wasn't being hired back after his attitude on his last day, none of that information made it to my manager. He starts back in a couple weeks, as she believes everyone deserves a second chance. But she said if people had told her all the other crap, there's no way he'd be back. But he's on the schedule now and there's nothing that can be done about it. Fortunately, he'll pretty much get one strike and he's out. But he's on the schedule now and there's nothing that can be done about it. Like heck. I'm not a manager, but I worked with the people in charge of firing people, and they were also in charge of arguing unemployment cases. When an ex-employee gets unemployment, it costs the company, so it is very important for companies to have all of their ducks in a row before firing someone. I.e., unless you see someone drinking, taking the drug, holding the drink or drug, you can't write them up. You can write them up for slurring at a customer, but you can't just say employees seem to be under the influence. Also, I worked at a Sprint retailer. This may be different for different industries. He's the best software engineer at 2 essential tasks that would take months of training for another employee. Because he is a pain to work with, I encourage him to use our work from home perk and make him run all emails through me before pee off one of the other software engineers. When I ran my shop, I kept a lot of idiots and buttholes on the team, mainly because the job was absurdly easy and a trained monkey could do it. It was far less paperwork to keep them on and only work them 1 or 2 shifts a week. 99% of the time, they eventually left of their own volition. In the words of the manager I trained under, there are no fired employees, just employees who don't work here anymore. Buttholes are manageable. What I can't sanction is incompetence. You know the type of person I am talking about. The type that, despite repeated attempts at training and being given second and third chances, they can't get their crap straight. The type that everyone knows is incompetent. People sigh and roll their eyes when people bring up their name. That crushes morale and kills productivity and innovation. Buttholes can impact morale, but not nearly to the extent of some jackoff that can't do his job. He's good at his job. There are multiple kinds of buttholes, and he's the kind that can talk with the other buttholes and get his point across, because he's one of them. Plus he doesn't try to grab his co-worker's butt. It might be the glorious butt of an army corporal, but she will give you the beatdown of a lifetime. Look, she claims often, but never touch, the or else is implied. SPC equals college grad. CPL equals high speed do not frick with. Not a manager but close to our HR department. Terrible female employee cries at her desk, makes up family deaths to get some time off, gets caught doing so, fakes a pregnancy, gets caught with that, too. She does way more harm than good when she finally does work. She gets busted retaliating against other co-workers. She also has a horrible hygiene problem that she refuses to fix. So what gives? She's mentioned suing the company because she feels picked on. That's it. Plain and simple. California is not as all as they'll have you believe. Just threaten to sue your employer and you'll have a job forever. Threaten to sue your employer and they start collecting evidence ready for when they do fire you. If HR are doing their job, that is, which is protecting the company against the employees. If your employees aren't mad at someone on their shift, invariably the enemy becomes the shift supervisor. I can have my guys resent me, or have them take it out on the jerk. That way I also have someone I can put on the crappy work, dirty stuff, annoying stuff, menial stuff, etc. without worrying about the rest of my guys having to put up with stuff they don't like to do relative to their jobs. Bonus perk. Butthole has lower productivity than everyone else because he's always doing other stuff. While I can't use this to fire him, it does mean the rest of my guys look like superstars come yearly reviews. This is so true. I hate to admit that I've been on both sides of this situation. We had one woman that finally walked off the job, but we hired her on because of the sob stories and thinking that her attitude would improve if she was in a permanent position. She was a temp. Yep, that was a mistake. Thing is, she would do amazing work and that swayed us into hiring her on. Thing is though, we would try to train her on other stations and she'd do what she could to fail. I think so we'd show her pity or sympathy. IT became so ridiculous we just kept her on the one station she chained herself to and let her whine about not making any progression. She also got worse, and if she felt something was unfair, she'd point it out. If I switched someone from one station to another, I'd get reminded that she'd need to be trained on it and then asked why wasn't I giving her the opportunity. Long story short, her attitude was so toxic that people from the offices, we are in production, completely different part of the building, would avoid her at all costs. However, what caused her to walk off the job? Despite being told not to, I let people switch stations for the day because it was an odd day. People came in at weird times, filled in multiple spots until people came in, and when the line finally filled up, people weren't where they were supposed to be. This however didn't impact the throughput because my team is fully trained on every station, so I allowed it. However, because this special snowflake followed the rules and stayed at her station and I didn't allow her to switch, she stayed there on her own accord. It was unfair and discriminatory. Yep, she walked off after that one and all I can say is, bye bye. I'm only giving you guys a scratching of what it was like to work with this woman, and after a year I cannot believe just how much better off we all were when she was gone. As that butthole who has had this conversation with my boss, who happens to own the company, I can give his reasons. 1. I've been here for 6 years except for a 6-month break. To date I'm the only person that hasn't fricked him over in any way, big or small. Everyone else has either been shady as frick, stolen from the company in some way, or just been a general dickbag. 2. Because I'm an butthole, everyone else just walks all over whoever he puts in the other leadership role because they make the mistake of befriending these people. Me? You're a co-worker. You and this company cease to exist to me the second I walk out the door. Going to try and get one over on the company? I'm going to catch wind of it and shut you down. 3. I've gone to bat for this company on so many occasions it's freaking ridiculous. Heck, I've been assaulted on 2 different occasions by employees because I caught them out in lies. A cornered dog and all that. So yeah, I'm an butthole, but I'm a company man and he knows it. He knows he can trust me with anything, and that I've got his best interests at heart. In turn, he pays me well and I'm pretty much invincible around here. After my little 6-month break, he knocked on my door and begged me to come back. His exact words were, listen, this place has gone to crap since you left and I need you back. I need you to be an butthole and get this place running right again. So I did. Heck, I've been assaulted on 2 different occasions by employees because I caught them out in lies. That's not normal, even for that butthole at an office building. To be totally honest, fear of confrontation. I'm not proud to admit it, but most of the times I've let someone stay too long is I am too much of a P to just fire the fuckwit. I know he sucks, but I come up with constant excuses to WRK around the flaws of the employee. I've changed my ways recently, and you better believe it if you suck on my team now, you're done. But I've spent a lot of years ruining my teams by keeping crappy people around far too long because I was scared. Because mostly the buttholes are more productive and driven, likely called an butthole because they prioritize their job over socializing. He does a really good job, he's smarter than you, he researches solutions on his own and has added a lot of documentation to our wiki. You guys spend a lot of time smoking, take an extra 10 minutes on your lunch, on the clock, have terrible documentation, and don't realize how much extra work he does at home fixing your fuck ups. He may be an butthole, and may refuse to do the grunt work that gets shoveled off on you guys, but there's a reason. He's an excellent worker and I don't want him going to another shop. Fairly recently, like within the past few months, my team hired a new guy. He gave a great interview, good references, etc. The only concern I had is that he's a bit younger than we typically hire for the level position we had open. He was in the awkward too advanced for entry level, not advanced enough for the next level phase of his career. So what the heck? He had a great interview and seems like he can grow into his position. He was hired. Since then he's been a disaster. The biggest problem he has is that he's too convinced of his own brilliance. And don't get me wrong, he is a smart guy, but he's taking on projects and work at a level like 15% above his current skill set. In order to perform, he needs to ask more questions and be much more thorough in his approach to solving problems. It's not enough to push a button and take what comes out. He needs to learn to question everything in much more detail. The reason we haven't fired him yet is twofold. First, it's too soon. It's not fair to him to fire him without giving him opportunities to perform better and learn from his mistakes. The second reason is that the company I work for generally doesn't let people go. We hire and retain higher level talent. People who don't fit it due to cultural or performance reasons generally get gently pushed towards finding something else within 3-6 months anyway. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.